How are we? How are we, people? This is chapter 5, my dad's life story. Those who are following this story keenly, you are aware I'm doing a series on pretty much what is there to say about my dad, the billionaire, Mr. Simpson William Chanda, the late, who lived till 1990. My dad. Kakati, the last 4 chapters, we've brought the timeline from growing up to his time in school, and now he's finishing school. Are we together? So we are around the 1969 timeline. What was going on in his life and what was going on around him that is to shape everything going forward. Kakati, the previous events had been in 1966. When the 1966 constitutional crisis happens, there's the attack on the Rubiri. The Rubiri, they attacked the king's palace. The army was sent in by the prime minister, who was, he seized over the country indirectly. And then there was the Pigeonhole Constitution, then which pretty much declares Uganda a republic. But along which lines, people? Let's go back. 1966 sets all. 1966 had been a catalyst of things going back. Kubanga kati mwebuuza, let's ask ourselves the question, Obote yajja atya? Yali azza atya? Because it is how you navigate your way around, the landscape. Okiraba, prior to independence, the events that were happening around Uganda or around Kampala or around Buganda that led to the formation of Uganda People's Congress. Nabagamba ekintu kino nti there had been riots in the 40s, just after the Second World War, ne mu 50s. Bintu byali biwanvu ne kabaka naddukirako e Bulaaya eno, baamuddusa sijui ebitayo byonna najja mu exile, n'akomawo oluvannyuma nnyo. Waliwo ebyali bigenda mu maaso. Naye the power was coming from where? Agamanyi gali gavaawa. That was, I wouldn't say it was the fight for independence. Well, by 1962, things were more or less on a plain field. We had the Kabaka Eka party that had been formed, and we had the Uganda People's Congress that had been formed. Naye the precursor to that was the Uganda National Congress. Bannange mutegeere ebintu bino byengezaako bagamba. Kino ekintu, my dad is going to get caught up in this kind of hula-bola of events. Until by 1962, he was in the junior team, in the junior football team of Cranes. He had played against the Kabaka, a football match in Mengo, while studying at Mengo Senior School. He had scored the winning goal, defeating the Kabaka's team. He wins the scholarship. Nafuna Skala. If things hadn't happened that way, my dad wouldn't have ended up in Mukalasa. He would have probably played football. Kuba he never be Dandy Sally, but David Oti. There are so many names there. Abali mu generation ye. Mukapira. Football. KCC, Kasasiro Boys, had been formed by the people who were killing in Kampala. Abalondanga ebisaaniko mu Kampala. Kasasiro Boys. Ate ye team tata jagenda okusupportinga later on. Mufuna bulungi nnyo. Express mukwano gw'abangi 1957 nga tugenda mu maaso. Those were more or less the pioneer teams. Kati ekya Express kiri mu jjolejjo Kiwanuka. Express etandikirawo wa Katwe. So by the fact that my dad was into football, he was more or less accessible at all levels. Let's jump. So after independence, Uganda begins what you'd say the post-independence era, where you have the Kabaka and then you have the Prime Minister. Are we there? So by 1966, things change. And the events in the country are going to determine what is going to happen next in the direction of his life. By 1969, he's finishing at Bukalasa Agricultural Institute, Bukalasa Agricultural College. So by 1970, he's 23 years old. Emyaka 23, he lands his first job in Mango Growers Cooperative Union. 1970. Let's go back. Obo tebamukuba amasasi. Mukimanyi ekyo. Yali mu Youth Wingers Conference ng'eggwa the last day. Eyo conference yali y'amaanyi nnyo nti yaliko Banyerere, yaliko baani the who's who. Mwe mugenda ndowooza okuva idea gye yali atebolinga eya East African Federation, East African Union, naye nga kivudde mu Common Man's Charter. Nabagamba nti Common Man's Charter kintu kyali kitemplate nga kya kikomunisti gye twali. That's where we were headed. That is the rise of the Uganda People's Congress. Kakati kyeyakola kyali bwe kiti. Bakwata abaana ab'amasomero abagezi ne babayingiza system okusinziira ku template eyo. Okiraba nti by 1970, when my dad is finishing school, gets a very, very landed job, n'agenda n'afuna emmotoka mu Pateero, izo zigundi abayindi abatundanga emmotoka empya, brand new. So he's driving at that age and he's doing his job as a chief financial auditor, 23 years old. Naye kye sinnategeera nti oba yali wa UPC, my dad, he never talked about politics. But what I can attest to is in 1969, there was the famous visit of the Pope John Paul, ng'ajja Uganda, era taata wange be bamu ku abaakirimu emabega behind the scenes, pulling left things right and center. Naye what did that signify? The visit of the Pope. Kubanga kyenzijukira, we used to do a pilgrimage to Namugongo. Era ne basista bange babiri basomera Namugongo Girls Boarding School era primary. Era nga buli mwaka tulina okugenda Namugongo, the shrine. Kati you're talking of the 80s. Ebyali bigenda maaso. Okay, let's go back. And that is playing against the religious background my dad had. Yali wa dini nnyo, my dad. Yali wa dini nnyo, dini ng'ajaagala nnyo. And that is also going to play in his hands when he makes the decision to marry my mom in 1972. Kubanga my mom was a Muslim. Yali Musiraamu era olutalo lwali kibuli awo. By 72, my dad has already made a name, a very big name. 25 years old. The Pope visits Uganda. It was a very, very auspicious occasion, 1969. 1969, 1970. Tugende ku Suzana. Kati 1969 Kabaka taliiwo. Kabaka ali London. Ali wano London mwekisayiro. Era agenda kufa. Akomyewo bamukomyewo mu 71 enjole. Mufuna bulungi nnyo. Okay? So my dad is working. Kakati byonna bye yali alimu n'ebyali bigenda mu maaso. Kakati government kati nga yobote mukitegeera bulungi nnyo. That is going to explain kye nabagamba kyesaagala kugenda mu nnyo nti waaliwo projects nyingi nnyo ezaali zikolebwa. Grandiose projects. Ebyo byemugamba nti UCB byali ku template y'obote. Bugoloobi flats byali ku template y'obote. Ebya common man's charter. Omanyi kati fe abasomye ku politics tutegeera ekintu kyenjogerako. If you went to countries like Russia, olaba ebintu bye bakola abantu balaba nti ensi yaabwe y'amaanyi nnyo. Grandiose projects. Government schools byani byonna ebyo ge masomero ago ge bayitanga zi college. Nyakisula college, Kigezi college, Ombochi college, Tororo college, Jinja college. Ng'ensi bagitematema like cartoons. Kati my dad is in the cooperatives. Ali eno, ali eri, abala bitabo, akola ki? West Mengo is so huge. Naye kati ne bafunamu ndowooza obuzibuzibu awo, obuzibuzibu wajja at some point ne babeera ne West Mengo, a breakaway. But it didn't last. And then you had East Mengo growers. Ne bazimba n'ekizimbe mu Kampala awo, ekizimbe ky'amaanyi nnyo. Kitaliko muzeeyi wange kubanga ye baali mu ssente nga they were handling the financial dealings. So he must have had a lot of access to what you call financial muscle. Afunye emikwano mu Kampala City Council. Kampala becomes a city council in 1968. Yani meya asooka, meya yali ani? Walusimbi? I think it was Walusimbi. Walusimbi, yes. The first mayor of Kampala. Kati mutegeera ekintu kyali kigenda maaso. So you can get the picture we're talking about here. We talked about Suzana. My dad now becomes a regular emukyakaze, omuvubuka omuto alina ssente mu Kampala awo. Kakati olwo agenda ku mitinga Nalulungi during the 1969 Miss Uganda ezaali mu Basasiriyo. Gwe nabagamba bino ebintu last week. Fe abadde mu bya beauty contests, kati nze nali mu entertainment osobola obbabulya the innings and outings. Kakati ebyedda byali totally different. So you can imagine in 1969 the leverage that was being pushed. Nalulungi wa Uganda. It was a very big event. Kiraba bana bagamba Cecilia Ogwal took part. Si ye yawangula. I doubt. Oh, Baba, I doubt. I'll find that one out. I shall find that one out. But my dad starts dating this girl. She was a girl at the time. She then nafuka lady, girlfriend. Kati nga bachakalira mu Suzana. Susanna Night Club enankulabye era banyumya Susanna ne bakugamba nti abantu bacakalanga Monday to Monday ate sigamba nti kucakala kuno okwekisiru bandi yakubanga wagendanga n'oyiga amazina. You had to go and learn how to dance. Squeeze, sijui English dance, tap dance, byani binabyo binango mala biga. There's a song written by Eddie Wamala where he glorifies Susanna Night Club. Okumanya ekifo kyali ky'amaanyi ne Obote yakifrequentinganga. Mama Miri akyali mulamu. Ayina otunyumiza ebintu bino. She can tell us a small story about Susanna. Kubanga tumulina mu bifaananyi nga bali ne bba nga bazinira mu Susanna. President of Uganda Katolo Obote ekintu akirina bulungi nnyo kimutambulira mu ngalo nga Uganda yiye era nga mukimu. I don't have a first-hand opinion oba kyemwandise opinion poll of what Uganda was around that time. Well, what I'm gathering is just good things. Papa Ze, you know, these things are happening so fast. Bazimbe UPC house eyo gyemulaba eyo ku Jinja Road eyo headquarters next waliwo Nile Grill. Wenabagamba awo yali restaurant yaba the who's who with the shopping arcade omwali nga amaduka g'ebbeeyi. That's where the ministers and the top brass used to sit. That is between 1966, 67, 68, 69, 70, 71 nga bamujjako. Kati ebyali bigenda maaso probably byali outside Uganda. Ebyali more of an influence. Nga mumanyi, you know, these things always happen about and about. Kakati nga abasirikale nga amagye gali disgruntled. The speculation goes that they had been handsomely promised by Obote kukiri ekyokujja ku kabaka, and that is going to play into his hands. Ate amagye ge gamujjako mu 71 Idi Amin n'abalala abaalimu. However, he had left for the Singapore Commonwealth Conference nga amagye gali disgruntled. Mufuna bulungi nnyo nga Amin bamuguddeko omusango ogwa smuggling and embezzlement nti bagenda e Congo ne babba gold. So, and he was the commander of the armed forces. So, and while he's on the conference, he receives a phone call or a telegraph saying that the army has taken over. That is on the 25th January 1971. I'm sure that's the date. Kakati ebintu bitandika okukyuka. So my dad is new in his career. 70, 71 ebintu bikyuse. So I would explain that just 2 years, that by 24 things are a bit shaky. Naye ebintu byali akoze by 24 nga biri astronomical. Are we together? Kati bajjako Obote. Kubanga Obote amagye ge gamujjako. Naye nga bwe nabagamba okusinziira ku this declassified information gye nnina, it was an interplay. You know, mufuna bulungi nnyo. The balance of power, non-allied, allied. The Cold War, etandika kati, the Cold War, the East versus the West. Kakati, Obote nga bwe nabagamba nti nga atutwala towards communism. which wasn't going to sit well with the world order that was at play. Kati okusinziira ku information aid declassified, the argument in the intelligence circles, CIA, is that they have got to remove Obote yalina okuvaako. So there was a better way to do that, because once you knew what was happening, and lo and behold, he was gone. Amujjako tiyakomawo. Kubanga n'amawulire ogafuna. He got the news via BBC while in Singapore. Ate Commonwealth nga yaki Abangereza ne bamuweereza obubaka tukomawo. Bakugjeeko. That's politics, people. That's politics. 311. Gwe bayita politics oyo gwe njogerako. So all those events happening are going to be the precursor to my dad wanting to settle down, probably. He's had a good time, he's partying, he's enjoying, he's going out with the most beautiful woman in Kampala. She was called Ruth. Ate yawangaala gyali nti akyali mulamu. Nze nyinza okuba nali mumanyi ng'omwana omuto. Let's stop there. Akati mu 71, things are going as they're going. My dad had already met my mom. Ngambo mulaba. And probably they had gotten to know each other. Nga bemanyi kyentegeeza nga bafunye omukwano. Naye remember tata wange yali ayagala sister we. Ono ye muto. Mufuna bulungi nnyo. Kakati bajjako Amin in 71. Amin takes over the country, and as a new president, definitely you are going to dismantle everything. And by what was going on, he issues decrees. Decree muzimanyi nti you say something nikifuuka rule of law. Kubanga yafuga ensi for the 8 years without a parliament. He only had ministers who were given orders what to do. Kati era n'abagamba buli kimu ekyali kigenda mu maaso. Template yo nayina bw'ogyetegereza yasangawo nsange. And that is going to explain when we reach into the middle of the 70s why the East African community faltered. There are a lot of questions there. Naye kati ngenda kubayita ku 72 aleeta decree egoba. It was called the economic war against the Asians. Naye ekintu ekyo bani abakifunamu ekyo ekyagoba abayindi? Kubanga some circles may argue that he was rewarding the army. He was rewarding the army. Naye ddala mu kituufu abamu ababenefitinga ku ebyo ebintu baali basirikale they changed the outfit. Well, okay, if the government compensated the Asians, but who were the benefactors? Yagaba maduka, yagaba. No. I think it is more than that. It's more than maduka. Byebyanyiza abantu. Nze nsomye economics. Manyi sente bwe zitambula. Money flow. Capitalism. Nti mubeeramu ba winners ne ba losers. After 1972, because I'm going to bring you to the wedding, you already know much about the wedding and what was going on. Kakati bano ba new elite, abaana baali babadde groomed by Obote. mwe muli ba Museveni bamwe. Museveni naye is a cadre of the Obote system. Yes, baasoma bye byabatwala e Tanzania, ebyo naye tujja bigendamu ne Kenya n'abaliyo sijui Fronasa byani byonna ebyali bigenda mu maaso okulwanisa Amini. Naye ate n'Amini naye yali kada Obote. So it was probably a puzzle, a fitting puzzle, and a puzzle that opens and closes. Munfuna bulungi nnyo. So my dad and a few other people, I think they saw a lot of opportunities. Yes, because of course Mango Growers Cooperative Union was a conglomerate of so many things, apart from purchasing and buying stuff here, there, you know. There were opportunities, you know, later on to venture into business. Ngabamaze okugoba abayindi after 72, 73, 74, up to 78, 79. If I began a mass from Uganda, what was the picture? You know, what was the picture? So we have a military government, later on, that is overthrown. Mfuna bulungi nnyo. So let's go back. In 1972, Uncle Patrick Kiwanuka Express n'abalala bali mu mupiira ate nena kiriki ya Mengo Senior School. Chanda gwali muzanyi wa kapiira, Chanda tukwetaaga, Chanda ali mu business. My dad cared less. He was after money. He was making money. So he gives up his football career, but takes a back seat as a patron supporter later on. Munfuna bulungi nnyo. Kati bajjole Kiwanuka at some point bagezako ku reviving. They tried to revive Ugandan football. Ne bakola Uganda Federation Cup, which later now is called FUFA. Munfuna bulungi nnyo. However, he escapes to exile after defeating Simba. Waliwo omupiira ogw'amaanyi ennyo. Wanyaka kati football now became a very powerful instrument in Uganda. N'abaagulimu kubanga sente zaali nnyingi nnyo ezaali mu bantu, nga teguliko nti gwa gavumenti, nga gwa babiliyonia. Ate bwe twogerako babiliyonia nga baana bato bali mu 25, 26. So why was my dad's wedding an eagerly anticipated event of 1972? It was the football fraternity that was coming together. Chiraba. And the mileage my dad had, of course, he was known and he had a lot of influence and he had the background in football. Not as a novice, he had played active football. So, and he had gone out with a very beautiful woman, and now he was engaged to marry my mom. Olutalo lutandika. My mom had to go and take classes to convert. In Namirembe, Bishop in Namirembe, but making it clear, omukazi gw'ogenda okuwasa Musiraamu alina okukyusa eddiini. My mom, Mariam Nasanga, my mom's names, she had to change her religion. Now, issues go back left, right and center. Up to Chibuli, well, from my mom's side, they are very, very strong Muslims. How is it going to look like on the family? And it is going to cause a divide. That decision was made at an expense, at a huge cost, at a price. nti ne kumbaga tebajja. On my mom's side tebajja kumbaga ye. They didn't. So are we good there? Are we good? So we are at 1972. That's where we are right now. That's the juncture. We are going to break down that wedding and its ramifications. So we've picked up on the events that were happening, that were playing side by side in my dad's sphere of his life as a young man in his early 20s. Very successful career, very much a public person. He's dating a very beautiful woman, and then he's engaged to marry my mom. Those are really good. Kati katukomao, next week tugenda kutandikira chapter 6. Are we there, people?